The first time he said it, it slipped out like a joke, but it carried the weight of 1,000 sleepless nights. I wish my daughter still had a mom like you. Armin Qureshi didn't even realize how much truth lived inside those words until the silence that followed stretched longer than it should have. The clink of cups, the low murmur of conversations in the cafe, even the hum of the ceiling lights, all of it seemed to fade into something distant. Across from him, his boss didn't laugh. She just looked at him. And in that moment, something shifted. Before we go deeper into this story, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that change lives, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, Echoes of Stories. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them most. Armin's life had not always been this heavy. There was a time when mornings meant laughter echoing through a small apartment, when the smell of chai mingled with the soft humming of his wife, Meher, as she moved through the kitchen. Their daughter, Zoya, used to run barefoot across the living room, her tiny voice filling every corner with joy. But life doesn't always ask before it changes everything. The accident came on a bright afternoon. A day that should have been ordinary. A day that should have passed quietly into memory. Instead, it became the dividing line between before and after. After that day, Armin learned what silence really sounded like. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the absence of warmth. Of presence. Of the one person who had made everything feel manageable. Meher was gone. And suddenly, Armin wasn't just a husband anymore. He was a single father trying to raise a 5-year-old girl who asked questions he didn't know how to answer. Why doesn't Mama wake up anymore? Why doesn't she come home? Why does everyone look sad when I say her name? He tried. God, he tried. He packed lunches, tied messy ponytails, burned toast, and learned how to braid hair by watching videos late into the night. He worked longer hours than he should have, terrified of losing the job that kept a roof over their heads. And every night, after Zoya finally fell asleep, he would sit in the dark and feel the weight of everything pressing down on him. That was where Samira Khan came into the picture. She was his boss. The kind of woman people described as composed, sharp, and distant. She ran the company with quiet authority, never raising her voice but never needing to. She noticed things others didn't, mistakes, patterns, people. She noticed Armin. At first, it was small things. The way he stayed late but looked exhausted. The way his work, once meticulous, began to carry tiny errors. The way he flinched whenever his phone rang during meetings, as if he was always expecting bad news. One evening, she called him into her office. Not to reprimand him. Not to warn him. But to ask, simply, if everything was all right. And that was the moment Armin almost broke. He didn't tell her everything. Not then. But he said enough. Enough for her to understand that behind his quiet demeanor was a man barely holding his world together. After that, things changed in subtle ways. Deadlines were adjusted without being mentioned. Meetings were scheduled around school pickup times. Work-from-home days appeared in his calendar like quiet acts of kindness. Armin never asked for any of it. And Samira never made a show of it. But he noticed. Zoya noticed too. She had started visiting the office sometimes, sitting quietly at a corner desk with her crayons and drawing pictures that always included 3 figures, a little girl, a man, and a woman with a bright smile. The woman in the drawings never had a face. Just a glow. One afternoon, Samira walked past and paused. Zoya looked up at her with curious eyes and offered her a crayon. That was the beginning. It wasn't immediate. It wasn't dramatic. But slowly, gently, Samira became a presence in Zoya's life. She would stop by Armin's desk with small treats, ask Zoya about her day, listen to her stories with genuine attention. And for the first time in a long time, Zoya laughed like she used to. Armin noticed that too. Which is why that sentence slipped out that evening at the cafe. It had been a rare break. Samira had insisted they step out for coffee after a long week. Zoya was at a neighbor's house, and for once, Armin wasn't rushing somewhere. They talked about work at first. Then about life. About the things people usually keep buried. And then, without thinking, he said it. I wish my daughter still had a mom like you. The moment the words left his mouth, he regretted them. Not because they weren't true. But because they were too true. He expected an awkward laugh. A polite dismissal. Instead, Samira leaned back slightly, her expression unreadable. And then she said something that made his heart stop. She doesn't have to wish. The world seemed to tilt. Armin blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. But Samira didn't look away. There was no hesitation in her gaze. No confusion. Just a quiet certainty that felt almost overwhelming. Armin's mind raced. This wasn't just kindness anymore. This wasn't just concern. This was something deeper. Something that scared him more than he wanted to admit. Because hope is a dangerous thing when you've already lost everything once. The days that followed were complicated. Armin found himself noticing things he hadn't before. The way Samira softened when she spoke to Zoya. The way Zoya's eyes lit up whenever she saw her. The way the space between them felt different now, charged with something unspoken. He tried to ignore it. Tried to convince himself it was just gratitude, just admiration. But late at night, when the apartment was quiet, the thought returned. What if Zoya, in her innocence, didn't struggle with such questions? One evening, as Armin tucked her into bed, she asked something that made his chest tighten. Baba, can Miss Samira come to my school play? He hesitated. Why do you want her there? Zoya looked at him as if the answer was obvious. Because she smiles at me like Mama used to. There are moments in life that break you all over again. And there are moments that begin to put you back together. Armin didn't know which one this was. The school play came on a bright, warm afternoon. The kind of day that felt full of possibility. Armin sat in the audience, his heart pounding as he scanned the crowd. And then he saw her. Samira stood near the entrance, holding a small bouquet of flowers. She looked slightly out of place among the crowd of parents, but there was no hesitation in her steps as she walked in. When Zoya stepped onto the stage and spotted her, her face lit up in a way Armin hadn't seen in years. That was the moment he realized something. This wasn't about replacing anyone. This wasn't about forgetting Meher. This was about allowing life to grow around the loss. About making space for something new without erasing what came before. After the play, Zoya ran into Samira's arms without thinking. And Samira held her like she had always been there. Armin watched from a distance, his emotions tangled and overwhelming. He had spent so long surviving that he had forgotten what it felt like to live. That evening, as the three of them walked back together under the soft glow of streetlights, something felt right. Not perfect. Not complete. But right. And maybe that was enough. If this story is touching your heart, take a moment to like, share, and comment. Stories like this remind us that even in our darkest moments, light has a way of finding us. Weeks turned into months. Life didn't magically become easy. There were still struggles. Still moments of doubt, of fear, of memories that refused to fade. But there was also laughter. There were shared meals, quiet conversations, small traditions forming without anyone noticing. And one evening, as they sat together watching Zoya fall asleep on the couch between them, Armin finally spoke the words he had been holding back. Not out of desperation. Not out of loneliness. But out of something real. Something steady. Samira didn't answer immediately. She simply reached for Zoya's hand, and then, slowly, for his. And in that simple, silent gesture, Armin felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Before we reach the end, here's a special request. Comment, second chances exist, if you believe that even broken stories can find beautiful endings. Because sometimes, life doesn't give you back what you lost. But it gives you something different. Something unexpected. Something that teaches you that love doesn't end. It changes. It grows. And if you're brave enough to open your heart again, it finds its way back to you.